YouTube, and tonight, a loving husband and father heading back home on a business trip catches a Southwest flight from Oakland to Orange County. But that loving dad never makes it off the flight alive. Tonight, claims a Southwest Airlines crew leaves the dad of three locked in the plane's tiny bathroom. Daddy screaming, moaning, crying in pain after they decide he's a, quote, unruly passenger.
His favorite role was this.
We're going for our first walk.
As husband and dad.
Today's Sunday pancake day. What are you making?
I'm making a pancake. I love him.
Kelly says her 5-year-old daughter, Sydney, will know how much her daddy loved her.
I miss him and love him so much, and he was my world.
And love craze or gun craze? Was Shayna Hubers a love crazed woman who couldn't let go of her boyfriend? Or was Ryan Poston a gun crazed lawyer who snaps under the pressures of a high-powered job? 29-year-old Ryan found dead on the marble floor of his dining room. 6 bullet wounds to the face, arm, chest. 24-year-old Shayna Hubers says she shoots in self-defense, but police say she shoots in cold blood. The Poston wanted out, wanted to stop the sex and dating with Hubers, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. Tonight, we obtained more secretly recorded interrogation video where Hubers blurts out, "Who's gonna marry me now when they find out I shot my boyfriend?" Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. I want to thank you for being with us. Bombshell tonight, a loving husband, a loving father, heads back home from a business trip. He catches a Southwest flight from Oakland to Orange County. But Daddy never makes it off the flight alive. Tonight, claims mounting that a Southwest Airlines crew leaves the dad of 3 locked in the plane's tiny bathroom, screaming, moaning, crying tears of pain after the flight crew decides he's a, quote, unruly passenger. Now, this father was one of the top businessmen in his region, but his real role was daddy. Look at this. This from CBS News.
The last thing he said to me was, I can't wait to get home to see you girls. That was the worst. My daughter and her father were so close.
Did it mean you going to the zoo, honey?
I just said, Daddy's not coming home. Daddy went to heaven.
We're going for a walk for coffee. This is probably the first of very many. Boo-boo. You can see Wrigley Field up here. It's Saturday night. She's hungry and tired, so let's get to it. That's your oatmeal.
Should have been helped on the aircraft. If they just would have gotten help. One flight attendant said that she opened the door and she saw the top of my husband's head. And his head was down, and he was just whimpering. And left him there. Medics should have met the aircraft, absolutely. Absolutely, and he would be here today.
March 11th, we're going for our first walk.
Straight out to John Phillips, host KABC. John, it's so hard for me to take in that this father, you know, your husband leaves, he goes on a business trip, you're at home, working, taking care of your family, expecting everything to run, everything's copacetic. All of a sudden, you find out of the blue your husband's dead. What happened?
Well, Nancy, as you described, he was up in the Bay Area for a business trip, gets on a Southwest Airlines 747 plane for a short hop. That's a quick hour-long flight to John Wayne Airport in Santa Ana, Orange County area. About 10 minutes before the plane landed, he goes into the back lavatory and locks himself into the restroom. When he's in there, he's screaming and yelling and crying, which of course
wait a minute,
alerts
right
the
there,
flight
John
attendants.
Phillips, KABC.
Yeah.
I don't really like the way that you said he locks himself in the bathroom. Of course you're going to lock the door when you go into a plane's bathroom. Of course he locked it. I mean, the way when I was listening, you know what? Hold on. Liz, pull this for John Phillips to hear. You probably already heard it. But when the flight crew calls, they go, oh, he's locked himself in the lab. Of course he locked the door. Do you have that for me, Liz? Listen to this, John Phillips.
Sure.
Hi, this is Southwest.
Hi.
I have a plane coming into gate 18. It'll probably be here in about 5 minutes. Apparently there's a passenger locked himself in the lab and is screaming and yelling. And
Male, female?
I believe it's a male.
Male. And he's Southwest, gate 18?
Yes.
What's your name again? I'm sorry?
Apparently the pilot said that he's going to make everybody stay seated. So
That'd be perfect
you
for our
guys want
guys.
to get on the plane and head right back there or wherever they are.
Plane coming into gate 18, the passenger locked himself in the restroom, and he's screaming.
So, John Phillips, when they call, when they radio down about what's happening, they don't say anything about, I need a crew, I need a gurney, I need a doctor, nothing. I mean, also, if you look back in some of the reports, there are allegations. They call him an unruly passenger. One of the flight attendants says she looks in, and all she could see is the top of his head. He was bent over in pain.
Right. Well, I think that's what created the confusion, because the flight attendants, of course, are safety professionals, not medical professionals. When they went back to check on him, they didn't know if he was having a psychological episode or a medical episode. Being 10 minutes away from the airport, they made the call that it would be in the best interest of the safety of the passengers on board to let the professionals take care of it on the ground. The problem is, when they called it in, they only sent members of the Orange County Sheriff's Department down to the plane. They did not send EMTs. That caused a 30-minute wait because they deplaned everyone on board before they sent the responders back to the plane to get them out of the lavatory.
Joining me right now, special guest, Richard's wife, the mother of that baby girl that you see. Kelly Ilchishin is with us. Kelly, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Kelly, when you hear the word confusion, you know, in my mind, when somebody is moaning and crying in pain, they're bent over in the bathroom. All you can see is the back and the top of their head. That says to me, if you're confused about whether there's a psychological or a medical problem, you ask, sir, do you need any help? And it just so happens, not only are you his widow, you're a flight attendant, right?
Correct. I'm a flight attendant.
I want to hear your response to confusion.
I have no words. They didn't assess him correctly. He needed medical assistance. He was not an unruly passenger. There was no conversation, ever. My husband never said anything to the flight attendants to make them feel that he was unruly. How can you be unruly when there's no communication?
Kelly, tell me, how did you first find out that something had gone terribly wrong?
I didn't find out until 11:45 that evening. A sheriff called me from my husband's phone.
And said what?
Are you Richard Ilchishin's wife? And I said yes. And I'm like, what's going on? And the first question he asked me was, does my husband do drugs? And I said, absolutely not. What are you talking about? What's going on? Is he arrested? What's happening? And he goes, ma'am, we are trying to figure this out. We don't know what is going on. All I can tell you is your husband was without oxygen for at least 30 minutes, maybe more. And that blink of an eye.
Okay, well, let me back it up, Kelly. Everyone, Kelly's husband, the father of this beautiful baby you're seeing, was left, according to reports, left to die, locked into a Southwest airline bathroom, and the guy's in there crying tears. You can hear him crying, moaning, actually screaming in pain. Nobody helps him. Nobody checks on him. Then they leave him locked in there. They deboard the plane. You know how long that takes? Then they show up with sheriffs, like the guy's done something wrong. He's dying. Nobody's even said, do you want some water? Or can I help you? Can I lay you down flat? Nothing. And Kelly, they call you, and the first question is, does your husband do drugs?
Correct.
Then what happened?
And then I think I just went in shock, and I started pacing because my daughter, because we went to pick up my husband at 10:15, and we were circling, and my daughter wanted her father, and she started crying, and during the circling, she finally fell asleep. And then I came home hoping that I just missed my husband, and he took a cab home, and he was not there. And then I just brought my daughter out of the car later on the couch, and then the police called me, and then I just went into shock. I was asking, I didn't understand why, because we have medical equipment. Why didn't the flight attendants help my husband? And he told me, not knowing that I was a flight attendant, that the flight attendants told him that they couldn't get off their jump seat due to FAA regulations, which is not true.
Okay. He dies of a massive pulmonary embolism. With me right now, the lawyer on the case, Andrew Spielberger. Andrew, thanks for being with us. I mean, it's very clear in the 911 call where their frame of mind was, what they thought was happening. What's your take on this, Andrew?
Well, Nancy, when I first got the case, obviously I go to experts in that field to determine if, their perspective on this. So I talked to flight attendant experts who, quite frankly, were just outraged at the conduct by this crew on this flight. They were just flabbergasted the way they handled the situation and the way they treated
Well,
Richard.
As a matter of fact, Andrew, my father had a heart attack on a plane, and he's alive tonight. I can tell you that. One of the reasons, because the way the flight crew handled it, they saved his life. Take a listen to this 911 call. You'll see what I mean.
One Airport Sheriff's Department.
Hi, it's North Southwest again. That incident at 18, the pilot said that they are going to keep the cockpit locked and closed, and it will be the aft lav on the FO side, and the flight attendants have been instructed to stay in their seats.
Okay.
And all the passengers, of course, all fine.
Okay. So they're going to be pulling up to the gate itself, right?
Yes, gate 18.
Okay. I'll let them know. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
We're going for a walk for coffee. This is probably the first of very many.
The last thing he said to me was, I love you, and I can't wait to get home to see my girls.
Apparently there's a passenger locked himself in the lab and is screaming and yelling.
Imagine circling the airport to pick up your husband. You got your baby in the back seat to meet daddy at the airport from a business trip, and it never happens. And you get a call from a sheriff, and the first thing they say is, does your husband do drugs? Well, that's not what happened here, okay? According to his widow, daddy dies locked in those tiny bathrooms on a Southwest airplane after the crew decided, without ever speaking to him, that he was an unruly passenger. Isn't it true, John Phillips, KABC, that they heard him screaming, crying, in pain, tears, moaning? How did they make the determination he was unruly and leave him locked in there to die? How did that happen?
Well, they, of course, didn't know that it was the blood clot situation that was going on. They just heard the screaming and yelling. One of the flight attendants then goes back to the lavatory and is able to get the door open. That's when his head goes down. They see the top of his head, and he's in there crying.
Well, I still am not. I guess I am disconnected because I don't understand when you see a grown man in the bathroom crying and moaning, why you would assume they're unruly as opposed to there's something horribly wrong. I've got to help them. Thank God, you know, they didn't think my father was unruly when he had a heart attack on a plane. Dr. William Maroney, forensic pathologist, Richard died of a pulmonary embolism. What is that exactly?
What happens is blood clots are created in the body and they fill up the arteries that go to the lungs, and they come in different sizes. Say this is the internal caliber of the inside of the arteries and the veins, and if your blood clot is this big, then it's probably not a big deal. If it's a little bit bigger, if it's this big, it is a big deal. And if he had a massive pulmonary embolism, his blood clot filled up the whole vasculature, which caused a complete breakdown in blood pressure. And what he was feeling was massive chest pain, massive shortness of breath, tremendous anxiety, and in a sense of impending doom. And he may have been nauseous, and he thought if he went to the bathroom, he could relieve himself, but it just gets worse. Now, his blood clot started, because they don't start in the lungs, started in his thighs and in his groin, and it was big, and it broke off, and it went up to his lungs, and that's the way they are. 26% of all pulmonary embolisms are fatal, and they needed to get him chest compressions and oxygen.
His favorite role was this.
We're going for our first walk.
As husband and dad.
Today's Sunday pancake day. What are you making?
I'm making a pancake. I love him.
Kelly says her 5-year-old daughter, Sydney, will know how much her daddy loved her.
I miss him and love him so much, and he was my world.
Just imagine what this family has been through. They find out daddy has died of a pulmonary embolism, extremely painful. It's a blood clot. This was a giant blood clot. Screaming, crying, moaning in the bathroom after the flight attendants decide he's just unruly, never even questioned him. Take a look at the lawsuit they are filing. Approximately 10 minutes before landing, Richard, in distress, goes to the bathroom. Adult male in distress, crying, moaning, quickly closes the bathroom door. Members of the crew treated it as involving an improper disruption by a passenger. Members of the crew falsely inform OC Sheriff's Department boarding the plane that he had barricaded himself in the bathroom. Sheriff's Department personnel made the decision to deboard all the passengers and crew on the plane before they even opened the door. Doctors say Richard had been deprived of oxygen to his brain 33 minutes. On the Southwest plane, that's about the time it took to deboard. If somebody had gotten him out of that, laid him on the floor, and rendered assistance, I bet he'd be alive today. Clark Goldband, what does Southwest Airlines say? What's their defense?
Well, Nancy, our show reached out to Southwest, and here's what they tell us. They say, according to crew reports, it appears to have been an unfortunate medical event, and they believe their employees handled it appropriately and professionally. They say the crew, Nancy, made unsuccessful attempts to pry open that lab door to try to reach the man and provide assistance. They also note their pilots arranged for first responders to meet the flight as soon as it arrived in Orange County, and they cite the privacy of the deceased, Nancy. They do not want to share any other additional details. They
With
are
me is
saddened.
Richard's widow, Kelly Olshizin. What do you say to Southwest's response?
I'm lost for words, Nancy. I can't. I don't even know how to comment to that. There's no way they think their crew did an appropriate job for my husband. There's no way. There's no
Well,
way.
one thing they said, Kelly, is they tried to pry the door open, but earlier we heard that the flight attendant said she opened the door and looked in there and saw the top of his head. So how can that be?
We are trained. We know how to open the door. We are trained. Those doors are not heavy doors.
No, they're not. In fact, every time
Clearly the
I'm
police
in there,
officer
somebody
opened it.
opens the door. Let me ask you
Right.
this, Kelly, how do you
Passengers,
open...
that could have helped.
How do you open a door if someone is in distress in those little bathrooms? How do you do that?
How do you open the door?
Yeah, how do you, if someone's in there in distress, how does the flight attendant get that door open?
There's a pin, there's a little hole on the outside of the laboratory door that you can press that unlocks it, that opens the door.
See, I did not know that. So all this business about prying it open.
Right.
And plus, they've already said they saw the top of his head. So how can they then say, we tried to pry it open and we couldn't get it open? So what do you think should have been done, Kelly?
They should have assessed my husband properly. They should have got him medical attention. He needed help. The first thing I would have done was got on the PA and asked if there was any medical personnel on board. Help me. Come to the back of the aircraft. Come assist.
Kelly, tell me how your little girl is doing.
She's doing okay. She misses her dad, you know, but I just think she's so young that she just doesn't realize that he's just gone forever.
How did you
understand.
explain to her that he was not coming home?
I told her that he was going to heaven, and then that's when she replied back to me, "Daddy's dead." And at that particular moment, I just started crying, and she was, and then my mom came in to take her to calm her down, and it's so much of a fog at that time.
This from CBS News.
The last thing he said to me was, I can't wait to get home to see you girls. That was the worst. My daughter and her father were so close.
Did it mean you're going to the zoo, honey?
I just said, Daddy's not coming home. Daddy went to heaven.